Jonathan, thank you so much for making time. We've known each other for just a little while. I think pretty much the balance of my e-commerce career. Why don't you just share a little bit about who you are and what you're doing?
Yeah, we do go way, way back, I guess is how they say that. Anyway, so Jonathan Briggs, I currently am head of sales and solutions at Nimble, which is an AI and robotics company that is turned into a 3PL. And so, from my background perspective, I've got three sectors where I've been in small package transportation and last mile delivery. I've been in e-commerce fulfillment and robotics, and then now have pulled all three of those together under one role. So I feel like my whole life's journey is now complete and I do everything I learned every day. Anyway, that's super high level of who I am, what I'm doing. Appreciate you having me on. Big fan of what you've been building out across your family of companies. So excited to finally actually be on the podcast with you today.
Yeah, this is good. So I'm excited because this is very much one of those the future is now conversations. So AI, robotics, e-commerce, everything's converging. I'd love to just start with kind of your overview of the history of robotics and fulfillment in general. Take it away.
Yeah, so for the true historians, there's significant gaps I will put in here. So, like any fact checkers can definitely find some faults here, but there's a handful of things to think about. One, robotics does go back a long time, even all the way back into World War II. There's instances and patents and stuff being found. Real world went into motion in the early 60s. A little company we know as General Motors put into robotics in a line, and still, again, not fulfillment distribution, but this kind of what puts things on the map. But the issue that you have in the manufacturing world versus warehousing world is they can do a single task all day, every day in building a door panel, as an example. In the warehouse, especially in e-commerce, we see variety and variability every day. So it took a lot longer to get from this repetitive, precise thing like welding or holding into what is now what we see today in e-commerce fulfillment. So fast forward from the 60s and our friends at General Motors, I think we really start seeing what we're seeing now in the early 2000s. 2003 Kiva systems came online. Another key date in history that really put a whole bunch of things in motion is 2012. Amazon acquired Kiva, which is now Amazon Robotics, for those who have not heard the word Kiva because it's been discontinued for a long time. So then that put in a whole bunch of new technologies because Amazon took that capability off the market, used it in-house, and then left people reeling. And actually, one of my past life companies, Quiet, was the first 3PL to use Kiva and then lost that capability. And they went in-house and created a system that we know now as Locust Robotics, stemmed really, I think, from that decommercializing of Kiva, put what is now known as AMR robotics into motion. And so we saw Locust come online around 2014, 2015, and starting to build that out. 2018, we see a ton of artificial intelligence and people trying to bring human skills to robotics of what they call a six-axis robotic arm to where you can do pick and pack and place. So the stuff that started in a GM plant in 1961 started getting intelligence to do what we're doing today in 2017, 2018-ish. And then obviously, I think we all know what happened in around 2020 and COVID really set this thing in motion where robotics probably skipped a decade, if not even more, because of the shutdowns and the labor challenges and everything, and then the growth of e-commerce for that couple year stint really put people in panic mode. So we saw robotics get deployed, I think, a lot sooner than they were ready for and that people were ready for from there. So I think those are like my key dates and times. And like I said, I'm sure there's 101 people that will fact check that and tell you something differently, but that's where I think got us to where we're at today.
That's super helpful. When you think about what the catalyst moments were, if you had to force rank them, how much of it is COVID and a shortage of labor versus AI coming into its own versus just Kiva coming off the market?
Oh, wow. I think no matter what, where we're at or where we're heading to was happening. I think it just happens a decade or two sooner because of the labor quality, availability, and cost of it went through the roof exponentially in COVID. So COVID definitely put current state AI in a fast track, and you saw billions of dollars get thrown in that sector, which probably if COVID doesn't happen, we don't see some of the mass chaos in VC money going in there that quickly, that ferociously, which I think then made it an arms race because all of a sudden we saw investment raises go into the tunes of hundreds of millions of dollars across these companies. I don't know that people would have done that if it didn't happen. So it seems like COVID in terms of like artificial intelligence and VC funding went very hand in hand. Obviously, AMRs and some of that stuff happened well before COVID happened, and they had a nice little progression and they were doing their thing. And some of their growth, I think, got exacerbated by it too. Yeah, I don't know if I truly stack ranked it, but if you want me to clarify on that, feel free to ask it a different way.
No, it's helpful, and you sparked a whole bunch of other thoughts for me. And I wonder, to your extent, from your perspective, Amazon obviously acquired Kiva and wanted in-house capabilities. Shopify acquired Six River and wanted in-house capabilities. Do you think that was Shopify trying to be Amazon and using their playbook, or do you get the sense that robotics in general is just something that people feel like they have to own outright versus leveraging something else?
Great question. I've talked on this a lot recently. Pieces of this, maybe not necessarily this exact topic, but I think it was them trying to build their version of FBA, right? Think about the timing of it. They had that summer, they had announced to the capital markets they were going to get into Shopify fulfillment. Then it was the acquisition of Six Rivers. And it really seemed like they were going to go all in and put a lot of pins on the map and really try to beat Amazon at their own game or try to compete with them at that level. Now, obviously, fast forward several years, and we've seen that whole thing thrown in the trash, right? We saw $400 some million valuation go down to 12 million in Six Rivers with Shopify divestiture. We saw a later acquisition, not part of that acquisition, of Deliver that then became Shopify and then became Flexport, and then still uncertainty in that world. So yes, but I think when they made that announcement and they made that thing, I think it was very much kind of a 2.0. Let's do what Amazon did with Kiva and let's use this system and let's try to build something big. And then it didn't happen.
No, that's great. Can you just give me an overview of the different types of robotics that you're seeing in warehouses today?
Yeah, there's a lot, right? So we've got lots of acronyms, and I'll use the acronym and I'll say what they are just for the lay people in the house. But there's ASRS, which is automated storage and retrieval. And so that has been coming online for a while. It is a heavy CapEx play. It's a heavy infrastructure play, but really creates it to where people can start using the cubing of the building and get rid of fixed position racking. Then you've got AMR, which we were talking about, autonomous mobile robotics, and can work in a couple capacities. So that can mean we'll hear terminology around that called goods to persons, or robots to people, or robots to goods scenarios where you can go in either or. But again, it's more of a material handling play and less a robot solution. It's more about movement of product from point A to point B. Still requires somebody to put something on it or take something off. We've got pick and place robotics, so 6-axis robots. So this is really all this AI that we keep seeing and hearing, bringing the human skills, trying to get dexterity down to a robot to be able to pick an item or pack an item. So we're seeing this start to really transpire. There's in this same lane is what's called singulation, where historically people would feed unit sorters as an example, or tilt tray sorters, and a person would stand in a bay. We're now seeing robotic arms go in there, and they call that singulation, putting one item on at a time into a sorter. Palletization or depalletization is another use for typically, again, the 6-axis robots. Trailer loading and unloading, as we saw this week with FedEx made a major announcement about their ability to load a loose loaded trailer in its full as it looks in a FedEx hub. So that's interesting.
That's pretty remarkable.
Yes. So the team over at Dexterity has been working on that with FedEx for quite some time. They finally put a major press release out, which means they feel confident and comfortable that they've triggered the thresholds that FedEx needs in terms of what percent of the volume could they handle without a person having to get involved. Can it load at enough rate of unit or pieces per hour to justify it? And then can it use enough of the cubing? So that I would think those are probably the three metrics that justified them making an announcement on it. But that's been the Achilles heel really of the industry, is the variability and the speed in which a UPS or a FedEx or a DHL needs to be able to load or unload a trailer, and with a time definite pull time and load schedule and all that type of stuff. So that one's pretty major. And also very interesting timing on the backs of UPS's announcement of finally getting their union situation solved, and a big chunk of union labor in their network sits at loading and unloading trailers, and probably their highest turnover of personnel sits at loading and unloading trailers. So interesting timing for FedEx to announce that on the back of that. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the market and how they're able to respond.
Yeah, well, especially as there's talks of FedEx becoming unionized itself, given their movement toward a consolidated parcel network. Yeah, it's interesting because on the one hand, the Teamsters wants to have those jobs because that's union due, The other hand, it's not necessarily something that people enjoy doing, so maybe they don't.
Not only that, it's the highest turnover, it's the highest injury prone stuff. So it tells me based on that, do the real people doing union work really want those jobs? And I think the answer is probably no. I think we're seeing that overwhelmingly, right? We're seeing the upper end of the workforce, that 45 to 55 age, has significantly tens of million, at least 10 million people have left that workforce historically, have done warehouse work, transportation work, and not coming back post COVID. And then the flip side is we're not replacing that in the, let's call it 18 to 25-year-old crowd is not signing up to come into warehousing jobs anytime soon. We're going to have this major flip in demographics, right? We're on the edge of the baby boom population moving out. They're now going to become huge consumers without being in the workforce. And so there's a whole bunch of demographic things that are at play in all of those things. And then just to round out the list, to get super technical, so AGVs, automated guided vehicles. So typically like driverless fork trucks is how to think about those, but they run on a rail typically or some type of a guide system. AMRs can also play in that space without the track. So there's been some competition there. And then a little bit outside of that may or may not be considered robotics, but we got to lump it in there as like yard management, where we're seeing autonomous trucks or jockeys come in and move trailers using AI to make that happen. Loading, removing trailers off and on the dock and get people there. And you could probably throw some of the automated packaging solutions in that mix as well. So I don't know that I exhausted it, but that's pretty close to what we're seeing and hearing and talking about.
Yeah, supply chain loves acronyms, and I guess robotics loves acronyms the most.
We sell into supply chains, so we come up with all kinds of three-letter words and throw them around. Everybody knows what they are. So hopefully I spelled them all out. I think I did.